What's up, guys? This is Bradley. You're listening to the Charm City Sideline podcast. It is Wednesday night, October 23rd, 9:32 p.m. Tonight, we're bringing back a special guest we had after week two, Sutton. Sutton, how are you doing tonight? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me back again. And I'm doing a lot better than, I was the last time we talked. We were 0-2. Since then, we ripped off five straight. We talked about it just before we went live, but I am pumped to talk about the Ravens a lot more than last time. So thanks again for having me on.
Definitely. Zach and Dawson, how are we doing?
Heck yeah, dude. Pumped up. We're 5-2 now. We reeled off five in a row. And excited to have Sutton on here, man. He's a great guest. And I'm excited to talk Ravens football, man. Let's get it.
Yeah, the differences between these two pods is like night and day. Like we are having a blast right now. Four straight offensive player of the weeks. I mean, come on. Like that's some big news today too. I'm just so excited to talk about Ravens football right now. I'm with you guys.
Awesome. What's up, Orlando and Fry reviews? Yeah, it's been good. We mentioned last time we did a podcast with Sutton, it was after the Raiders game. We were 0-2, and things were not looking bright. We were talking about mock drafts. We were talking about John Harbaugh. All that stuff. So we'll get into the first question here, and we'll start with Dawson. We'll start with Sutton because last time Sutton was on, the last question he asked us was about this guy, and the opinions may have changed a little bit since that last episode. And this one's from Jake. Question is, has Rashod Bateman finally arrived? What do you think, Sutton?
As a Rashad Bateman truther, as a perpetuant of the Rashad Bateman agenda all season, yes, 100%. I think that he has arrived in this offense, and for a couple of different reasons. One, when Rashad Bateman spoke, I think it was either today or yesterday, or maybe right after the game, something like that. He was talking about the deep touchdown play against the Bucks that he had, and he was saying that Todd Monken drew that play up for him. Now he didn't know that based on the coverage that he saw, he didn't think he was going to get the ball, but the safety dropped down. Lamar Jackson read it, and he threw it right over the top to Bateman. And what I really want to emphasize is that we watched as Ravens fans so much all 22 in coach's film of Rashad Bateman being open on numerous plays, but Lamar Jackson just not looking his way. And it was frustrating as hell to watch, and I think I can speak for all of us when I say that. And so to see him kind of finally emerge, get that 100-yard game, get that touchdown, get that connection with Lamar, and him, be consistently developing that all season, because this isn't the first game that we've seen like a spark or, a flash from Rashad Bateman. And I only think that the connection is going to grow stronger and stronger and stronger. We predicted this as Ravens fans, most of us did at least, before the season, that like this guy would probably be a more prevalent part of our offense. So that's the long part of the answer, but the short part is absolutely 100% yes. Rashad Bateman has arrived in this Ravens offense.
Yeah, man. It's been awesome to see. He's like literally jumped off the screen the last 2 weeks, man, and he's been balling out. He's been everything what, we drafted him in 2021 to be, and he's finally kind of establishing this identity in our offense and establishing a role. Todd Monken is utilizing him in a way that's just so natural to what he brings to the table. And we're finally starting to see that trust and that chemistry established with quarterback one and Lamar. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see because of course you have Zay Flowers already, who is a fantastic wide receiver and was our first round pick. But now you're seeing a guy who has been here for multiple years and lots of people, and I can't say myself 100% included, but I can include myself in this. There was a lot of question about Rashad Bateman and people kind of unsure as to where he's going to end up as a Baltimore Raven, and the bust word was thrown out there. And I can't say that was uncalled for because his play was just, not up to the level that of being a first round pick. But last 2 weeks, man, he's been fantastic. He's been great at separation. We know this. We've seen the metrics. He's a fantastic route runner, and his hands have never really been an issue. He's just struggled with injuries, and he's kind of just been a ghost in this offense. But now you're really seeing him start to get the volume and targets, and he's catching the ball extremely well. He's becoming a really good downfield target for Lamar, as we can see the last couple of weeks, man. And he's really he's really starting to blossom, man, and it's been amazing. And if he can keep stacking these games and kind of keep this confidence going, because we all know football is a mental game, for a lot of players, as all sports are. But especially football, especially when you're a first round pick and you haven't really done much, it's really good to start stacking a lot of successful games, man. And it's a matter before time. And who knows, dude? He could literally have 1,000 yards this season. He's not. I think he's 18 yards behind Zay right now. So we could have two close to 1,000-yard wide receivers, man, homegrown wide receivers at that, and that would just be incredible. So it's been awesome to see Bateman, man, really kind of take charge of his role and just be great. And I love it, and I hope he keeps stacking them.
Yeah, I'll be the first to admit that I was calling the bust card on Rashod Bateman that week 2 pod. I just saw so much potential in him, and really not seeing anything really pay off made me want to point that way. And now I look back and I think I'm completely wrong. I think now that this whole time has happened, Zay is, as talented as it gets, but there's some weird connection with Lamar's scramble ability and then finding Bateman. Like it's like they're on a different kind of wire where maybe we see it with Likely a lot, or maybe we used to see it with Andrews, and it feels like it's been Bateman as of late, where just kind of these plays where you're making it out of nothing and he's the one on the other end of it. And I'm extremely impressed. I think he's finally arrived. I don't think it's been like I don't think that his potential is going to go levels above this. Now, I'll be a little bit salty, but I think he can get, even to that 1,000-yard receiver area and prove that he's a long-time wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, it's really interesting that we could possibly have 2,000-yard receivers after struggling to ever have one. So that'll definitely be interesting, but
two homegrown wide receivers at that. I will say that
there
if
you
you would
go.
have asked me, or I'm sorry, if you were to tell me before the season that, hey, Rashod Bateman this year is going to have 750 yards and 5 touchdowns, I would be like, I'll take it. Thank you. That's, obviously the more the merrier, but I'll take it. And he's at, I think, 396 yards ish. And he has 2 or 3 touchdowns. So he's already obviously on trajectory to pump that out of the water. And man, it's gonna be very awesome to see if he keeps this going, man, within the next few weeks. If he really starts to stack these games, he is quickly going to be near that 1,000-yard mark, man, towards the end of the season. And boy, that would be absolutely fantastic to see. I just can't wait. And I hope, man, because right now I'm a Bateman truther, man, and I'm hoping he can just keep balling out.
Yeah, for sure.
And one more thing I wanted to add to Zach's point. He was mentioning how Rashod Bateman and Lamar Jackson just kind of seem to be on the same page more often nowadays, and I think that is mainly due to the fact that Rashod Bateman, he's coming back to the ball. I think before he was mainly like an on-schedule receiver where when he gets to the top of his route, he's expecting the ball, and if it's not there, it's okay. I'm just not getting to look this play, maybe next play, and I think that this season he's kind of started to kind of adopt kind of like that backyard mentality that Lamar Jackson receivers kind of need to adapt, because the guy can keep the play alive longer than pretty much any other quarterback in the league. So if you keep yourself available, you will get looks from Lamar, and I think that Rashod Bateman is realizing that, and we're really bearing that fruit from this development of this chemistry. So love it.
Something real quick. I think there might be something off with your audio.
Really?
It's like your voice sounds fine, but there's like sort of this noise like every couple of words.
It's like an echo or something. I don't know. Or if even, I don't know.
Let me see. Try something.
But I'll go ahead and get to the second question here. This one was asked by like every question in here is asked one time, and this question was asked like 20. And it's about the trade deadline, and there were multiple different questions asked about the deadline, but some of them were like, which receiver should the Ravens target? Some of them were, what position should the Ravens target? So, Zach, we'll start with you on this one. Just like overall thoughts on the deadline. Do you want edge rusher? Do you want a receiver? Do you want no one? What are you thinking here?
Yeah, I think the Ravens right now, especially Eric DeCosta, is looking at this team and seeing that there's not really a weakness. There's only things that we could upgrade. I think that's really the only thing that you could say. And there's guys out there to upgrade positions, most definitely. I think Jadeveon Clowney, and a weird return with him is possible. Cooper Kupp's name has been thrown around a lot. That's a bigger name, but still. Wide receiver market and edges and stuff like that. And I really can't really pin a specific guy or really a position to go after. I think it's going to be DaCosta staying close to that phone and monitoring the rest of the league and conversations with players that are available. I saw one rumor about like Zadarius Smith's availability and people like that, like just seeing if they're available and then seeing what the price for these players is, because I think the Ravens have a lot of draft capital, 11 picks or something. That's more than enough. I mean, if you can get, DeAndre Hopkins level talent like the Chiefs did for a 5th rounder, why not throw it out there for a good pass rusher to just add on to an already stacked team and just see what they can do?
Yeah, I think when you talk about a general manager, especially to Eric DaCosta's magnitude, he's done a lot of big trades in the past. He's made big time moves. Like he's not scared to push the red button. And red button, I mean, go make that big move, make the impact move that can immediately upgrade your team. And I can't sit here and logically predict or just hope for him to go after one specific guy because none of us, and I mean none of us, truly know what Eric DaCosta is doing or who he likes or who he would even go after. I mean, you will never be able to predict who he's going after. Now, if you were to ask me personally, what position I want, I definitely want it on the defensive side of the ball. And I would be all for bringing in a wide receiver because unfortunately, you're one bad thing away from Nelson Aguilar being your wide receiver too, or vice versa, anybody else. And that's more so just depth and being safe rather than sorry. But wide receivers right now are playing great. So that's not like an immediate day one need. But on the defensive side of the ball, unfortunately, the defense is not playing up to standard in Baltimore, and there has to be an upgrade there. I would say defensive back, of course, you can look at corner and safety because the secondary's been getting torched, but it's like, honest to God, I don't believe our issues on the back end are a personnel issue, and I think it's rather, the team's not on the same page, and it's, Zach Orr starting and his, first year kinks working it out and stuff like that. But it's kind of hard to think about that because if there's an upgrade possible at the deadline, then the Ravens have to take it. And I've seen a lot of things on Twitter saying possibly going after Marshawn Lattimore down in New Orleans because he has a very friendly cap. And he would probably be on the easier end of acquiring through draft capital. And like Zach said, we have 11 picks next year. That is a huge arsenal of draft picks. So I don't see why Eric DaCosta couldn't throw one or maybe a few of those towards getting an upgrade. And I hope it's in a secondary or a pass rushing unit. And, like I said, I can't predict anyone who would come to Baltimore because we will never know. But I just hope that if we do make a move at a deadline and it is a pretty good trade to help this team, I hope it's for a pass rusher because right now the pass rush is decent, but it's not getting the job done. And it's only making the secondary's job even harder because we can't even get to the quarterback. And I love our guys there. I love Kyle Vanoy. I love Odafe Owe. I am hopeful of David Ajabo. I like Tavius Robinson, but at the end of the day, they're not getting it done right now. And with what's going on the offensive side of the ball right now in Baltimore, with how historically great this offense is going to be, you have to make a move and have to try to push your chips in to go all in on the season and try to win a Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens at the deadline. I do think the Ravens make a move. Like I said, I can't tell you what that move is going to be, and I don't think anyone is, no matter how big of a Ravens fan you are. But I do have faith and hope in Eric DaCosta, and I think he will make a move to get this team better.
Yeah. Real quick, can you guys hear me okay or?
Boom.
Sounds good right now.
I think it's good.
All right, cool. Yeah, I love everything that Dawson just says. Most specifically, the sentiment about edge rusher. I would say that's my primary, point of focus when it comes to what the Ravens need right now. We cannot, especially in the second half, right? We cannot get quarterbacks on the ground, and it's frustrating to see. In spots we can here and there, but like for the most part, especially when these teams are down, they're just dropping back all day long, and it just seems like there's nothing we can do about it. So edge rusher would be the one that I would bring in. Now, Zadarius Smith is the name that I'm really kind of looking at. Apologize, my dog just jumped on my bed here. Um, But Zadarius Smith is a name that I'm looking at. A lot of Ravens fans I saw were kind of salty about that one. No, stay on that side. He didn't want to come back the first time. So, stay over there. But I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I feel like a Zadarius Smith could be a really, really good addition to this defense because, like Dawson said, the fact that we can't get home with our front seven, it makes the back end's job even that harder, even that much harder. So I'm definitely gonna go edge rusher there for who I want to pick up in, before the deadline. There was one more thing I wanted to mention that Dawson talked about as well. What was it? What was it? What was it? Uh, oh, wide receiver. Wide receiver. The DeAndre Hopkins signing today from the Chiefs or the trade that they made with the Titans, that kind of told me what kind of season it was going to be. If you remember, the Bills just got Amari Cooper, right? And so what do the Chiefs do? Automatically, they go out and they get them a star receiver, or at least like a kind of like a veteran presence receiver that's kind of going to fill the shoes of a Rashee Rice, I would assume. Um, but now I think the ball is mainly in Eric DeCosta's court. You can't really look at Joe Burrow in Cincinnati because they're not really winning too much right now. They've been doing a little bit better, but the Ravens are on an absolute heater. We need to make a move, right? We need to be aggressive right here. We need to, I think, take a big swing. And I'm hoping that's what Eric DeCosta does. I mean, like Dawson says, we can't predict exactly what he's going to do. But if I had control and if I had a mystery ball or a magic ball or whatever, I would go with an edge rusher. And Max Crosby, I know that that's a big name. That's probably like the loftiest one out there. But if the Ravens could take a big swing at that guy, make it happen because I think that I firmly believe the Ravens are a Max Crosby away from being Super Bowl favorites, not contenders, but Super Bowl favorites. So I'll end it with this. I'm gonna go edge rusher.
I like that. And we had a conversation on a Q&A maybe 2 weeks ago where, we're sitting at 3-2 and we're talking about the trade deadline, similar thing. And I almost got into this mindset of like, we're good right now. Oh yeah, we were talking about Devontae Adams. That's what we were talking about the day he posted the Edgar Allan Poe stuff.
Yeah,
And I was almost saying that like, I don't want to pay that much for a receiver and all that. And then, a few minutes later, just the more I thought about it, I was like, if you are this good, you don't want to be a play away in the AFC Championship or a play away in the Super Bowl when you could have acquired someone that maybe makes that play. And what I was talking about then is like whether we get a receiver or edge rusher, I was saying even like let's say Ravens trade for Adam Thielen. Maybe everyone's like pissed if that happens. But maybe it's like 3rd and 8 in the fourth quarter of the AFC Championship game and he makes a play. That's sort of how I feel. Just like get someone. It doesn't have to be Max Crosby. Obviously, that'd probably be my number one choice. But just like get someone and know that like you sort of did everything you could to try to win a Super Bowl this year. And it really sucked with what happened with Derrick Henry last year. Who knows what happens if the Ravens end up getting him mid-season, but I guess we'll never know. So
yeah. And it's really a football philosophy thing, right? Like, I mean, what does your organization really pride themselves on? Like, what are their morals and values? Like, we know that there's certain franchises out here that will take big swings, go all out, and will kind of like, leverage their future, for it, and they'll win a Super Bowl because of it. And I would love to see the Ravens kind of do that at least once. I mean, because think about it, we only have 2 seasons, this season and next season, before Lamar Jackson becomes 25%, a whole quarter of the cap, right? So I think that now's the time, if any time, to make a big swing.
and also I thought you were going to say when you said 2 years left, also probably 1 to 2 more years of Derrick Henry as well.
Right.
And so it's kind of all that combined. And obviously the Ravens will probably be good for at least, 8 to 10 more years. But like you said, the cap and then the Derrick Henry, having a Hall of Fame running back helps too. So let's try to win it now.
I will say the
Yeah.
cool thing too is a lot of these teams with these high profile players that are willing to depart from them and guys who the Ravens could potentially use to upgrade and go after. These teams are willing to eat the cap space. These teams are willing to take on these salaries if you give up a better draft pick. So it's not like, you got to give up a really good draft pick and pay the guy. More than likely, if you give up a good draft pick, they're going to pay for him. So you're basically giving up a draft pick and bringing in the player, and you don't got to pay him anything. So, especially with a guy like Cooper Cup, I'm pretty sure the Rams, they're willing to eat his salary if a team can give him like a second or a third round pick. So, that's a cool thing with a lot of these times at the trade deadline. These teams just want to offload and get draft picks, and they already know they're not competing. So, they're willing to pay a guy. Say no, they're not going to do anything if they pay him or don't pay him. So, cool thing is if the Ravens actually want to go all in and realize this is a time to do so, if you want to look at this 2-year window with Derrick Henry, if that's what you will, um, they can more than likely do it, especially with a lot of draft picks and a lot of pretty good draft picks. Like, we saw him a couple years ago do with Roquan Smith. They gave over a second round pick. It has changed our defense. Not right now. Our defense is pretty bad, but obviously we know how much bringing in Roquan has affected this defense and this team. He's a leader. He's a great linebacker, and it's a trade I would do 10 out of 10 times over again.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with everything you guys said. And we'll get into the third question here. This one's from Lewis, and he wanted to know our record prediction for the rest of the season. So this will be fun. We can all pull up the Ravens schedule, and we'll sort of go through this and see what we think here. Does anyone want to start, or do you guys?
So
want
let's
me to
go
start?
game by game and just each give like a little brief,
Okay,
win or
I like
loss.
that. Or we can just predict it as we go. Okay, so at Browns coming up. Do we all say win?
It's
Yeah,
hard because the
I'm gonna
Ravens
say
drop
win.
games and play down to opponents at times, but
Yeah.
right now this team is rolling. I can't see anything stopping that offense, and I think Jameis Winston's a better quarterback than Deshaun Watson, as crazy as that may sound, but he gets a little crazy and he's very turnover prone. So I think the defense capitalizes on some turnovers this week, and it's the end game for Cleveland. I think this is where Baltimore goes in there and handles business.
Yeah, I agree there. So then it'll be week 9, Broncos in Baltimore. I'm gonna go with a win there too. Anyone have any thoughts on that one? Or
I'm gonna go win in that one. Really good against rookie quarterbacks. The Ravens have been historically,
yeah,
and I think we're just a little bit too much for the Broncos, especially at home. 1 p.m.
Yeah.
CBS. That's like literally our bread and butter. So let me go Ravens in that one.
I'm going to be a little more cautious about it. I think they have the best offensive line and the second best D line, as in sacks and sacks allowed. They are a pretty good team and might give us some problems in a Baltimore game. I don't think they're winning, but it could be a little closer than we think.
Saul Williams. We're running the table. I love that. That's a good comment over there.
I
Love
mean,
it.
2-2 to 14-2, 2019. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But here we go. Thursday night, November 7th, against the Bengals. This is an interesting one.
We'll be wearing the new uniforms in this one,
Yeah.
and I think we do take the W home. I think by this time, I don't know exactly. I'd have to pull up the Bengals schedule. But what's their record right now? You guys know off the top?
Are
3 and
they
4.
3 and 4.
3-4.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, by the time that week rolls around, if they lose another game or two, I think that they'll probably start kind of capitulating their season, and I think we kind of walk all over them, especially at home. So I'll take the Ravens in that one too.
I will say I'm gonna be in attendance for this game. I'm going to this game, so I'm super pumped
Oh
up.
yeah,
Uh,
nice.
I'm coming out from Michigan for this, but there's just something about the Ravens being at home in primetime football, wearing an alternate uniform. They are just absolutely unreal. And we're debuting the purple helmets, which I'm super pumped to see. Uh, I like what Sutton said. I think the Bengals, if they lose 1 or 2 more games by this point, which I think is very possible with the way they're playing, unfortunately for Bengals fans, they could kind of, I mean, they're going to play us tough no matter what. It's the Bengals. They hate us. They want to kill every single one of us. But this is going to be a tough game no matter what, but I do think the Ravens know what this game means to the Bengals and themselves. And I think, if this game was at 1 o'clock, maybe, I think we could possibly lose and the sweep would have, or the split would happen. But I think at home, Thursday Night Football, alternate uniform, going for the sweep against the Bengals, I think the Ravens keep this rolling and absolutely put an end to the Bengals season.
There is something interesting to the Ravens wearing either all black or, like Sutton said, like the new all purple. It just feels like they don't lose when it's a special occasion, I guess you could say.
Aura.
Yeah, exactly. So right now, do we all have the Ravens at 8-2. Zach, did you give us an L to the Broncos there?
I'm not giving us an L to the Broncos, but I think I would give us an L to the Bengals. I'm looking at their
Okay.
schedule right now. They play the Eagles and then the Raiders. So I'm going to give a loss to the Eagles, a win to the Raiders. They're at 4-5, and they're sitting in a really tough spot, needing to get that win in order to look at the wild card. I mean, you have to win that game against the tough Ravens team, and I think it's a matter of want to get more, and maybe it comes down to the last few plays. I think they take it, though.
I can see that. So then week 11, Sunday, November 17th, at Pittsburgh, 1 p.m. CBS. I don't know. You guys have any thoughts about this one?
I'm gonna go a
Oh, yeah,
loss
that's-
here for the Ravens. I think this one is ugly. I mean, as all Steelers versus Ravens games are, especially in the past couple of years, they've been very, very ugly, very, very low scoring. It'll be interesting to see how this kind of like, I don't want to call it new and improved Ravens offense, new and improved Lamar Jackson, but kind of sort of, right? I mean, they're putting up historic numbers already. But I think that Mike Tomlin, he's had the formula for a long time and kind of stifling the Ravens game plans, and not everything is going to work against those guys. I mean, I just know that 100%. We're not going to be scoring on 6 straight drives against the Pittsburgh Steelers like we did against the Buccaneers. So, yeah, in this one, I'm going to go with a ugly loss. If I had to predict the score, I'd say we lose by maybe like 3 or 4 points, something close. But let me go Steelers in that one.
I think I have to agree with Sutton. It's very hard to see any losses on the schedule with the way this team is playing right now, and the numbers they are scoring at is a historic rate. But just the Steelers always play us tough, man, especially in Pittsburgh. Like he said, Mike Tomlin has a formula. The Pittsburgh defense is always really good. And for some reason, dude, for some reason when we play Pittsburgh, we always just forget how to play football. And it's always a very ugly, low scoring, physical game, which is awesome. But a lot of times, more often than not, recently, it's not awesome for us at the end. So I do think this is one of those weird games where the Ravens could have had it multiple times and they just unfortunately drop it near the end. Like Sutton said, we probably lose by less than a handful of points. So I think this is one game the Ravens just unfortunately drop. But I do think we win later in the season at home for sure.
Yeah, so then we go to LA on Monday night. I feel like this is a dub. Ravens are just, Lamar's like the best quarterback of all time on Monday Night Football. Just always sort of seems like that. And, we do get the Harbaugh Bowl, but I don't know if everyone was expecting the Chargers to be great this year, but they're definitely not as good as most were expecting. It's definitely tough when you have no receivers, but I don't know. I'm gonna go with a win here. Does anyone disagree?
No, I'm gonna go with the Ravens winning this one. I don't think that Giro gets his revenge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think our defense can lock in this week against the Greg Roman led offense. They don't put up great numbers. They don't really move the ball. Herbert's a fantastic quarterback. They don't really have good weapons, and their offensive scheme right now is just we know the story of what it looks like. So I think the Ravens roll, especially on Monday Night Football. It's primetime football, dude. It's so hard to bet against this team. This team is absolutely lights out on primetime, especially on Monday night.
Yeah, and then Ravens will play the Eagles at home, 4:25 CBS, Sunday, December 1st. I'm going to go with a loss here. What do you guys think?
I agree.
Ooh, it's
I'm going
tough to
win.
call it. It's tough to call a loss against an NFC team.
Yeah.
So
That is true.
I want to side with Zach on this one, but if this one is so heavily reliant for me on whether or not AJ Brown is healthy, right? Like if they are healthy like across the board, I think that they could give us some problems, and I think it is in Philly, right? No,
It's
no, it's
in
in
No,
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
It's
It's
in
Yeah.
in
Baltimore.
Baltimore. Okay, it's in Baltimore. But that run game with Saquon Barkley, he's been one of the top rushers in the league this year. AJ Brown is my favorite wide receiver in the league. I always say he's the best in the league. People say I'm crazy for it, but I think that
Whoa.
he gives you everything you want in a wide receiver. Size, physicality, strong hands, 50
yeah,
50 balls, you know what I mean? Like attitude for a wide receiver. One, he gives you
yep.
all of that. So, you know, I'm gonna go with the loss in this one. I gotta side with Bradley and Dawson. It's not gonna be a perfect season, but yeah, I'll go with the loss here.
I think the Eagles' offense, unless we see drastic changes, potential move at the deadline, or this defense just figures out how to play dominant football again, man, this Eagles' offense might just put a beating down on Baltimore's defense. And I hate to say that, dude, but it's just Philadelphia's offense is really good. They have a quarterback, obviously, with who we know in Jalen Hurts. They have two great wide receivers. They have top 3 running back in the NFL. They have a really good tight end. They have a pretty good O line, and their defense isn't the worst in the NFL. So I think this might be one of those shootout games, but I think at the end the defense can't make a stop, and unfortunately the Eagles take it. It might be on a last minute field goal. But I think this is just a game that, you're not going to have a perfect season, and that's a really tough opponent, especially a late season. So who knows what happens? Ravens could obviously still win that game, but I think they drop this one to Philly.
So then the Ravens go into a week 14 bye week really, really late there. And then they come out of it, go to MetLife, play the Giants. I'm going to put a win here. Does anyone think the Ravens are going to lose this game? I feel like I'd be surprised if so.
I think the spread of this game might be like 12.
Possibly. Okay, so we'll move on from there. That's a pretty easy pick at least. We'll see what happens when it actually happens. But then we got the second game against the Steelers. This is, kind of the fun time of the regular season, I would say. December 21st, got a Saturday game against the Steelers, 4:30 on Fox. So this will probably be Burkhardt and Brady again. Steelers in Baltimore. I'm going to go with a win, especially because I took a loss on the last one.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the Ravens W in this one too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I have a split with them, so I agree.
Awesome. And then 4 days later, on Christmas Day, the third game in 10 days. Now, I will mention every team playing on Christmas, it's their third game in 10 days. So it's not really a disadvantage. But Ravens going to Houston to play the Texans on Christmas Day at 4:30 p.m. on Netflix. I feel like this is a popular loss pick, but I'm going to go with a win.
That is a very tough game to pick. This Houston's offense is really good, dude. Oh, I don't know. Down in Houston, Christmas night, essentially. I think primetime shows up. I think Lamar carries this team to a win. I think Derrick Henry has a great game, and I think this defense somehow locks in. It's a long time from now, though. A lot can change. That's a long time from now, boys. Who knows?
Yes.
I think as of right now, I'm going to predict the win.
I'm going to predict the win in dramatic fashion. I think it's going to be a shootout. I think CJ Stroud shows up to play in this one. And I think that might be the other game we see Lamar Jackson get a Jackson 5, to be honest with you. I think that, he showed out on Christmas last year. I think we double it up going into this year. So give me a Ravens W, Lamar Jackson 5 touchdowns. It might be a bold take, but it's going to be a good game.
Awesome. I like that. And then the Ravens close it out against the Browns, probably a 1 p.m. CBS game. That one will be in Baltimore. I feel like we're all going to win there.
Oh yeah. And I forgot to mention, to be honest with you, with a lot of these like December, November games, it's going to be cold, right? And Derrick Henry's going to have a lot bigger effect on those games, especially down the stretch in the second half of those. And of course, in this Browns game, last game of the season, we might not even have Derrick Henry in a whole bunch, to be honest with you. But I do think we take that one. So, yep. What do we end with, Bradley?
I personally picked us. I have 13-4.
That's what I got.
I think all of us predicted 2 losses, one way or the other.
Yeah.
So we all got 13-4. I feel like
that's fair.
I predicted the Ravens to go 12 after 0-2. I predicted the Ravens to go 12-5 in our season preview. Zach and Dawson, I believe, both had 13-4.
13-4, I think.
Yeah, so did I on PRP.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, pretty consistent across the board for us. I feel like it's funny that we all have 2 losses the rest of the way. I could definitely see 12-5. I also would not be surprised at 14-3. You never know with how the Ravens can string these wins together. But yeah, that'll probably not. I don't think 13-4 gets you the 1 seed this year with the Chiefs being 6-0, and if the Ravens are 13-4, the Chiefs would have to be 12-5 in order for the Ravens to get the 1 seed. So
yeah,
it doesn't look great for that. 14-3 maybe gets it for you.
Chiefs would have to go 6-5.
Yeah, that's not happening.
No.
Well,
2 seed for the Texans game will be big for 2 versus 3 seeding, maybe even 4. We'll see what the Bills can do. Next question here from Seth. We'll start with Dawson on this one. Thoughts on the Chiefs trading for DeAndre Hopkins?
Well, of course, I'm not a fan of it. I wanted DeAndre Hopkins. I was a big DeAndre Hopkins advocate for the Ravens to potentially go get him at the deadline. And I wake up this morning, and the first thing I see is DeAndre Hopkins traded. Click on the headliner, and I see red and yellow in the Kansas City Chiefs. And I was immediately upset. But, it obviously sucks. It's not great because that's our biggest kryptonite in the AFC. And I will say it, they're 6-0, and they're probably going to be the 1 seed. And they're going to be the team that you have to run through to get to the Super Bowl in the AFC. I mean, it's never going to change. Even if Mahomes right now statistically is playing the worst ball of his career, the Chiefs are always going to be there. And here's the Tennessee Titans just gift wrapping a wide receiver one, a bona fide star to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I don't care if he's 31 or 32, whatever DeAndre Hopkins is, he's still a really good receiver. He's been in Tennessee the last couple seasons with very questionable quarterback play. So I'm not really blaming him for his struggles. If you want to say they have been struggles on him, so I think it's going to be a great acquisition for Kansas City. I think you're going to see an immediate impact whether he plays this week or next week. And down the stretch, he's going to be a playmaker, and you're going to see a lot of touchdowns. You're going to see a lot of touchdowns. They're going to force feed him, and I'm pretty sure they got him for like a mid-round pick. Was it like a fourth-round pick, fifth, fourth, or something like that? Fifth, I believe, can become a fourth with play impacting it. So I don't know. Pretty good trade for Kansas City. Sucks for us, but at the same time, the Ravens can also counteract that trade by making their own, and hopefully they can. So I think possibly Kansas City saw the game Monday night in Tampa, saw how good our offense was, and was like, ooh, we need to go get D-Hop or go get somebody. So hopefully the Ravens can counteract their trade and make their own.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him with a very competent quarterback again. Like he was easily top 3 wide receiver for a few years, a big chunk of years in a row there. And Will Levis in that kind of situation also turned around and different situations with, and they're just, he could never really find the actual talented quarterback to actually throw him the ball. So it's kind of a sad dig on Will Levis and them and Mason Rudolph. But yeah, whenever he was with Deshaun Watson and them, like even Kyler for a while there, it was like he still got it like every single day, every single week. And I think the Chiefs are going to get everything out of him. I am concerned though, if you have Kelsey playing as good as they are right now and winning games, and Mahomes' stats aren't looking great, but I mean, it's enough to win games, tying in a star receiver who probably wants the ball, 6+ times a game, 5+ times a game. How does that all like string together? Is that going to be a part of Mahomes and Andy Reid trying to figure that out, or is D-Hop here to play for a ring? Is he going to do whatever it takes and play that team ball? I'm just curious to see how it goes, and it's really sick for the league.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs are a team that's kind of been riddled with injuries all season. I mean, they started the season with no Hollywood Brown. They were anticipating him. Rashee Rice obviously goes down a couple of weeks ago. Travis Kelce is getting older, although he's playing a little bit better. And then, Pacheco gets hurt, so on and so forth, all the rest. So I think they kind of had to make a move like this. They knew that. My thing is, what are the Ravens going to do in response, right? I talked about it earlier. This is a big swing from the Kansas City Chiefs because even though that they lost a lot of people on offense, I still think, of course, they're 6-0. They still can win games with what they had. So I still think like going out and getting DeAndre Hopkins was still sort of a luxury in a way because it's not like guys were necessarily underperforming. Mahomes was throwing a lot of picks. You know what I mean? He's 6 to 8 touchdown in picks right now. Like it's not good. It's not good. It's not like guys are dropping passes either. They've only had 5 drop balls all season, right? And we're going into week 8. So, again, this is kind of like a luxury. At the same time, I understand because they do have some guys banged up. I think Hollywood's supposed to come back. I don't know what the report is on Rashee Rice, if he's done for the season or if he's supposed to come back at some point this season. But it's a big swing from the Chiefs, and I think that the Ravens need to swing back.
That Rashee Rice thing is weird. I feel like they're kind of just keeping it under wraps. But like, do you have to clarify a player's injury when something like that happens, or?
I think you do. You have to report that.
Because there's never been anything about like he tore his ACL or.
That's true. I don't know, or at least if it was really quiet. super quiet.
Because it seems like no one really knows what's going on there. But question from Chris. This is sort of a big discussion here. We'll start with Sutton. Do you think our defense will get it together before the end of the regular season?
That's a good question. It's a great question. Since we last talked, a lot has happened. I think that the Ravens have shown flashes, again, as my dog jumps on the bed. He's all in the shot. But yeah, as the Ravens show flashes, I think that they will get it together down the stretch of the season. I think that bringing in a Dean Pease a couple of weeks ago as a senior advisor role on this defense is kind of going to work good for us. But at the same time, I think a lot of the issues have to do with communication. Communication has been something that's been an ailment for us all season long, especially in that secondary. I see guys looking confused before plays start, and I need a lot less of that because it leads to a lot more blown coverages. And then there's also just like a couple of minor execution things to clean up as well. One player that comes to mind for me, and I want to kind of get you guys' opinion on this as well and you guys' responses, but Brandon Stevens, he's a guy who we constantly see on the other guy's number one receiver. And while we all know that Brandon Stevens is a good cover corner, he can't finish plays nearly as consistently as we might like him to do. One play that comes to mind for me last week was, of course, Mike Evans scoring that touchdown. And I won't put that all on Brandon Stevens. I mean, it was kind of like between him and Marcus Williams a little bit. They were both on the same side of the field there. But the very next possession that the Bucks were on the field, Baker goes deep for Mike Evans again. He has Brandon Stevens beat again on a bum hamstring, you know? And like it just wasn't really encouraging to see for me. Thank goodness Marlowe got those 2 picks. It's just been a lot of up and down and down and up. It feels like once we get one problem solved, another one pops up. It's like a game of whack-a-mole almost. But I do think that the Ravens will get it together as these colder months start to roll around. They get in rhythm a little bit with these divisional games, and Zach Ward just gets a little bit more comfortable.
I do agree with that. I do think the defense eventually is going to bounce back. You have way too talented of a roster and depth chart for this defense not to eventually catch on. And you have a lot of proven players who have already had years of success in the NFL. It's not like we have a bunch of young guys who are like in their first year and they're just not clicking. Marlon Humphrey's obviously an all-pro corner. Brandon Stevens last year was phenomenal. I mean, he was one of the best corners in the league. People were talking about extending him right now, getting him locked up. He was fantastic. And you have Kyle Hamilton, obviously, who I think's probably the best safety in the NFL. And you have a bunch of other really proven veterans and stuff. So good thing is that, we're still 5-2. So it's like, yeah, this defense has been really bad, but luckily we have an offense to kind of overshadow that. And I think as time goes on, Zach Orr is only going to get more comfortable. He's only going to get more experienced. And I like how we mention Mike McDonald a lot when he first came in Baltimore, became a defensive coordinator. It wasn't his first defensive coordinator gig. Mike McDonald came in with prior defensive coordinating, experience. He was here in Michigan, and they were a great defensive unit. So this is Zach Orr's first like real job as a defensive coordinator, as like
That's a good
anything
point.
other than a positional coach. And obviously that's important as well. But this is a huge, huge difference from what Zach Orr's been doing, all these past few years. And, he's only going to get better as time goes on. Like Sutton mentioned, he brought in Dean Pease, who's a very highly respected defensive, just coach, just NFL coach in general. Obviously, we know the track record of defensive coordinator in Baltimore. So that obviously shows that he cares. He knows they got to be better. And he knows that there's a lack of experience there that can help by bringing in a guy, a veteran like Dean Pease. So I do think this defense eventually catches on. And I do think bringing in somebody at the trade deadline would be a big part of that. But either way, I think you have way too talented of a roster for them not to figure it out. And I think, this isn't the topic of the question, but with how good our offense is playing, the majority of teams in the NFL, no matter how many points they score, if you're scoring 30 points, more than likely you're going to win the majority of games. Just because simply alone, you're going to outshoot a vast majority of teams you're playing in the NFL, because a lot of teams right now, if any, can outscore the Ravens on offense. So the good thing is we have a fantastic historical offense to kind of alleviate the pressure on the defense right now. But absolutely, they need to get better, and they will get better. And once they do, man, good luck, NFL.
Yeah, like what we talked about the last pod was hoping that they can get into upper like teens level, 18, 19th, or maybe the early 20s. And sadly, what that means right now, if you're dead last or about there, that means playing top 10 for these next, what, 8, 9 weeks. That's what it means. And flipping the script like that, I just don't think is what's going to happen, sadly. Um, a game like last week where everything statistically, just watching it through 3 quarters was a good defense. And then the fourth quarter, you just fall apart. I love what Ed Reed said about it's a championship level team until you get to the fact that they can't finish games like this. And that's the last step for the Ravens is to be able to close a game. And I think the real tell, at least for me, is with this Browns game Sunday. Jameis is, he's a crazy freaking dude. Like he is so much fun as an NFL fan. And if he's able to throw really well on us, even if it's not through the first 3 quarters and it ends up being through the fourth quarter, there's a problem. There's a legitimate problem. And I'm going to have to blame Zach Orr. If we've seen close to a very similar roster do it last year or the year before, where McDonald was able to control it, and then this time it's just not happening, I am then very concerned. Right now, I'm kind of sitting in that area where I'm thinking, okay, I think Orr can get it going at some point, and this next week is the exact opportunity to do it. Especially with last week, you play almost a perfect game and then screw yourself in the end, and then this is the real good chance to prove that you can be the right defense.
I will say real quick, I totally agree with that, Zach, and I would 100% agree that these next 2 weeks specifically, you have the Bengals. I'm sorry, you have the Browns and then the Broncos. And I mean, no disrespect to them at all, but Jameis Winston and Bo Nix, if they give you an issue and they really carve into this defense, no disrespect to them, but they are nowhere near on the level right now of a Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield, Jane Daniels, Dak Prescott. Those are way less of a quarterback than what we've played the last 5 games, and I get it. We've gotten torched, but it will be encouraging to see if this defense can take advantage of these matchups the next 2 weeks. But if they don't, and it continues, and we still are getting ripped apart by these two quarterbacks we play the next 2 weeks, there's definitely going to be a pretty large concern because I don't know how much easier it's going to get than that as far as favorable matchups. So we'll see the next 2 weeks, man. But this has to be the opportunity for the Ravens defense to come out here and finally not get ripped apart.
My only take on this is, and Dawson, you touched on it. This Browns and Broncos game, if they can play well and maybe give up like under 20 points, or let's just say like under 40 points for the two games combined, like I feel like you could sort of get confident from that point on, and maybe for the rest of the season they're playing well. On the flip side of things, if you give up 28 and 31, then it might just be like this defense just isn't going to be good this year. So I agree with you. I think these two games are really going to tell us a lot. Two more questions. This one from Jason. We had great news today with Keaton Mitchell returning to practice, and he now joins the backfield with Derrick Henry and Justice Hill. I would assume he probably suits up for that Bengals Thursday nighter or the Steelers game November 17th. Probably one of those two. But we'll start with Sutton here. What are your thoughts on bringing back Keaton Mitchell and possibly, if he's back to 100%, what is he going to do for the offense?
Very excited to get Keaton back. It's kind of like a bittersweet thing because just inevitably with Keaton Mitchell being back, he is going to cut into Justice Hill's kind of workload, and I think we'll still be able to get Justice Hill kind of on the field, involved in the passing game. He's also such an underrated blocker. He's had some really, really tough assignments this season. He's done a beautiful job picking up on a lot of blitzes. And I know this segment's not on Justice Hill, but I just have to give him his flowers really quickly. But Keaton Mitchell, man, if he can come back and even be 3/4 of what he was, especially speed wise, top end speed wise, I think that'll create some really nice duality between him and the power rushing of Derrick Henry. And especially when it gets like into the colder months, as we are starting to get into, it's going to be interesting to see how these teams decide to defend us in the second half, and of course they're going to try to load up the box to try to stop Derrick Henry. And the thing is, Keaton Mitchell is flying under the radar right now. Just like when we injected him into this offense last season and nobody knew who he was, and so he was breaking off 50, 60-yard runs and breaking top 20 mile per hour speeds. The hype died down once he got hurt. But I think coming back into this season, we'll have, sort of that element of surprise with him. And you'll see him in on like a 1st and 10, right? And nobody thinks the ball's going to him because Derrick Henry's not in the game. Then they hand it off to him. He breaks it off for 30, 40 yards, and we're right back to where we were last year. So it's one of those things where, Todd Monken, he's going to have to find a way to get this kid his touches because he's just too electric. And I'm excited to see him play again.
I think we have the perfect offensive coordinator to utilize as many weapons at his disposal because when he was with Georgia, man, that's all he did. He was known for utilizing his weapons across the field and getting everybody involved. And right when they brought him to Baltimore, that was kind of the thing that stood out to me was this guy is going to utilize everybody and it's going to be a complete fair share. Everyone's going to get their own share of touches, runs, passes, catch, everything. So I mean, yeah, it's kind of sucks thinking about it because it's like, okay, well, you get a guy back, but that's also going to hurt somebody's stock right now. But I don't think it's going to be an issue. I think they see what this backfield specifically is doing right now with just Henry and Justice. And now you're adding a guy who's just pure electricity and speed, much like your quarterback, pretty much. And dude, you have to find a way to utilize that, man. And I have all the faith in the world. And I think Todd Monken's going to draw up a perfect game plan. And I think they'll utilize him correctly. And that first house call from Keaton Mitchell this season, man, it is going to be incredible. I hope it's at the bank on Thursday Night Football. That'd be incredible. I'd be there. That'd be absolutely insane.
Yeah.
That would get that place rocking. And
Can you imagine in the new
just,
unis?
oh my God. Like the second handoff of the game, Keaton Mitchell just houses it like 50 yards.
It's like a purple blur just going right by. Yeah.
And he reaches like 21 miles per hour. Holy crap, dude. That would be incredible. That's my thing. When he comes back, man, I still think he's going to be good, obviously. I still think he's going to be just like the Keaton we saw last year. It's just going to be very tricky and a little worrisome to see if he still has that top end speed and has that like agility and, cutting ability and stuff like that because he was like a rocket last year, dude. It was incredible. But people can't, overlook he had a really, really bad knee injury. Like that was gruesome. It was bad. So, I mean, there was more than just an ACL tear. It was pretty bad, but his recovery has gone extremely well from everything we've seen, and he's completely on track. And he's actually coming back earlier than they originally thought, which is incredible. So they even said like mid-November at first. So I mean, it's what October 23rd, and he returned to practice. So that's very encouraging, man. And I'm super pumped to get him back. Add more fuel to the fire. Just when you thought the Baltimore offense couldn't get better, man, here comes another running back who almost took the NFL by storm last season. So I can't wait.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with what you guys said. Just having him back in there and just the chance. My favorite play of his last year was the touchdown run against the Browns. I don't know how he got the corner on that run. I swear that's like the fastest I've ever seen an NFL player run. Maybe not the fastest I've ever seen an NFL player run, but maybe the most surprised I've ever been at beating a defender to the sideline. It was an insane run. And
now hold on, Bradley.
What?
I can't let you get that one off, man. You said that was the most impressive run that you saw somebody beat somebody around the corner to the sideline. I have to bring this back up.
Okay.
2020 playoffs against the Titans. Lamar Jackson takes it up the gut and runs around the entire defense from 50 yards out, man.
Yeah.
There were guys way down 30 yards ahead of him who had a head start to try to get the corner, and Lamar Jackson beats all of them, man, because he just refused to lose. Yeah, to the pylon, because he just absolutely refused to lose that game. So, I mean, I did like the Keaton Mitchell, how he got around the corner against the Browns. It looked like those guys were like running in mud, to be honest with you. But Lamar Jackson takes that cake for me.
I'll say I was more surprised by the Keaton Mitchell run. Like I knew he was fast, but I didn't know he was that fast. And on that play, who was that?
That was the first house call that he had last season, right, against Cleveland? Because I know he had one against Seattle too, but I think Cleveland was first.
Was that after the Seahawks game?
Which was it, Cleveland or Seattle? That was the first game where he really
It was not
took off.
Cleveland.
I want to
I
say it
feel
was
like
Seattle.
I think it was Seattle first.
But anyway,
Yeah.
I can't remember who was announcing that game, but the color guy, it might have been Acho's brother. But he was like,
Sam,
whoa. He was like, I didn't know he was that fast either. But yeah, that was insane. Just hoping to be able to see that. D-Money liked his run against the Seahawks. He had a couple crazy runs against the Seahawks. And sort of his coming out game, I guess you could say. But I guess we'll get into the last question.
He had two.
Yeah.
He had 2 house calls from like the 50-yard line last season, did he not?
Yeah.
He had one against Cleveland and one against Seattle, and they were both like the same exact run. It was insane.
Mhm.
He like just absolutely outran the defense, and like Sutton said, it looked like they were running in mud, dude. It was incredible.
Yeah. We'll get in the final question here. We'll start with Zach on this one. This is an interesting question that, could be talked about for a long time. And I feel like we usually have this discussion every season around this time is when we start talking about it. But it's from Flynn, and they're asking what our confidence level is on the Ravens finally getting to the Super Bowl this season.
It's never ever been this high for me. Not last year. Like right now, the way this team is playing, if we were to go play the Chiefs, like let's say the AFC Championship is tomorrow, and the Chiefs maybe have their guys back. Maybe Pacheco's back. I think he's supposed to return at some point in the year, and Hollywood is supposed to be back for the playoffs. They have some guys. The way the offense is playing right now, I just think they would outshoot anyone in the NFL. Literally anyone. There's not a team you could put in front of me if they had everyone back. Let's say, Rashee Rice also adds a level to the Chiefs. But I'm kind of under the influence that he's going to be out for the year. In that case, I just don't think you have the firepower to beat the Ravens right now offensively. The defensive side is the only one that I sit here kind of worrisome about. It's and what we were saying earlier about the defense, hoping that it gets to these lower numbers, it means playing really good the rest of the year. And it's possible. It's definitely possible. It's just, how can you teach this team? How can Harbaugh and his guys teach this team to play full 4 quarters when, fourth quarter comes around and you're up 24 because Lamar and the offense are scoring at will? Like there's nothing you can do to stop them. And the defense is like, well, they can have a free touchdown here. And then, onside kick. Oh, they can blah, blah, blah. It stacks up. And I think stuff like that gets eliminated as the year goes on. And I think maybe a move at the deadline helps. But overall, it has never been this high for me. Like I'm very confident that they can get there.
Real
Yeah.
quick, I just feel like I was this confident last season. You know what? Like going into that Ravens-Texans game, and after the Ravens beat the Dolphins, I would say, and the Ravens clinched the 1 seed. In my mind, I felt more confident than 2019 because when you have the 1 seed, and there's this always talk about the Ravens not wanting us not wanting the Ravens to have the 1 seed. You should always want the 1 seed because when you look at it, you play the worst team that found a way to win in the wild card round at home. And then if you win that, which almost always the 1 seed wins their first game, then you have like 1 home game to get to the Super Bowl. And last year, 2019 and last year, it's just you had to win 2 games to get to the Super Bowl, and they couldn't get it done. And this year, it's probably going to be 3. And I can't say I'm more confident than last year. I do think somehow Lamar's a better player than he was last year, and he's going to probably be a better player next year than he is this year. But that's sort of what it is because, guys, Zach and Dawson, we had a in-depth conversation a few weeks ago about defense doesn't win championships anymore. Offense wins championships. And last year, a historic Ravens defense, and yes, it was a great offense, but it wasn't the offense that we have right now. And so that's kind of where I would say maybe we can just put up 35 against a good defense in a playoff game. And I didn't exactly feel that way last year, with adding Derrick Henry, Zay Flowers' second year, Bateman full healthy season. It's like I feel more confident in the team this year, but the fact that we're not going to have the 1 seed, I feel like almost kind of makes it even compared to last year.
Yeah, I'm very confident. I think this team is riding high right now, and they're easily one of the best teams in the league. And this offense that we're putting on the field this season is absolutely incredible. Like it's literally going to go down. If it keeps doing what it's doing and everyone stays healthy, this offense is going to go down in the history books, and it's going to be one we look back on for a long, long time, whether they do anything or not, just because of the numbers alone and how much they've done and accomplished. But in the same time, I am very, very, very worried about this defense, and I've been saying this for weeks now. And I am so encouraged by what this offense is doing and how Lamar Jackson somehow becomes a much better player every single season, which is crazy. Because he won the MVP twice already. Last year he was an MVP, and he's miles ahead and way better this year than he was last year, and it's incredible to say. But at the same time, this defense worries me, and until I can see anything otherwise and show them, or have them prove to us that they can play top tier ball again, I think we can make the Super Bowl, but it's very hard to think about because if the offense has, they're not always going to put up 30 points a game. There's going to be a couple of games this season where we put up maybe 20 and we got to slug it out on defense and try to win. And I'm just not encouraged by that right now because this defense is playing very poorly. So, yeah, my thoughts and are very high of this team. I think they can do it and they absolutely can. But same time, if the defense doesn't tighten up and get better, man, it's going to be really tough to sit here and really logically think that they can get past these other teams that can put up 30 points, especially on the AFC side of the ball. We have the toughest conference by far, I would say, as far as quarterbacks and opposing offenses. And if you got to go in the playoffs, man, and your offense is great, but our defense looks like it is right now against a CJ Stroud at home or a Josh Allen at home or even Joe Burrow, it's going to be hard, man. It's going to be hard to logically think that we can go in and outshoot them just because our defense alone is very poor.
Yeah, and for me, I think that I have the same level of hope this year that I did last year for a couple different reasons. Last year we had a really great offense and a really great defense, and but the only difference was we didn't have Derrick Henry, so there wasn't that extra weapon, right, that you could really threaten towards anybody in the playoffs who you face. But this year we have a stellar offense that does feature a Derrick Henry, but the defense is really lacking, especially in the pass defense department. Two things. Number one, I think that the Ravens, if they want to make any sort of playoff run, they have to clean up the penalties, right? I think that the Ravens right now are a top three penalized team in the league. I think the other night we had like 8 for 89 yards or 85 yards or something like that. It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. I just that's something that just frustrates the hell out of me because I know like when Derrick Henry runs around the corner for and picks up 12 yards, but they call it back because of like a ticky tack hold or something like that. It kills drives. It kills drives. And we can't have that in the playoffs only because the type of coaching philosophy we had, and I touched on, the philosophy of a football team earlier. When you look at the way that the Ravens play football, I think that the Bucks game was a good indicator of what a playoff game might look like in the future. For example, a team coming out and punching us in the mouth, them coming down, scoring on the first drive, right? We're down 7-0. They happen to get up 10-0 on us. What happens? We go away from that weapon that we have, Derrick Henry. How many carries did Derrick Henry have going into the second half? Not a whole lot, right? Not a whole lot. It wasn't until we started really dominating through the air, Lamar Jackson really kind of took over. They were like, okay, now we can throw Henry back at you, right? But, oh, you're up one or two possessions on us. All right, we're going to go away from that, and now we're going to turn into this team, right? We morph a little bit too quickly. So I think that if the Ravens offensive coaching staff can kind of, how the kids say, stand on business, right? Especially even if we get down early, right? Keep giving it to Derrick Henry. This is literally what you signed him for. It's going to be cold outside no matter where we are, right? Um, unless we're in Houston. I don't think we'll be playing in Houston. But if we're in Buffalo, if we're in Arrowhead, and we're probably going to have to go to Arrowhead, give the ball to Derrick Henry and make them stop him all four quarters. All four quarters, right? Like that's when you want to really run him the most. Keaton Mitchell will be back in the fold as well. And of course, we're setting up the pass with the run so effortlessly nowadays. It just looks beautiful. It looks absolutely beautiful. So I'll wrap it up just like this. I think that the Ravens have a good shot at getting to a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl this year. But there's a couple things that need to be addressed. They need to stop shooting themselves in the foot with penalties, and they need to stick to their identity. We found our identity in week 3, and we haven't looked back. I just hope we don't abandon it again in the playoffs.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, I like that. Does anyone have any final thoughts in that conversation?
Not really. I mean, Sutton pretty much nailed it on the head. We were the first seed in 2019, and we were the first seed last year. You had, a fantastic team, a record-breaking historical team, and in the end, what lost you and kicked you out of even appearing in a Super Bowl was, us shooting ourselves in the foot and costly penalties, costly decision making, coaching decisions, completely abandoning your identity. I mean, in 2019, dude, we were the first seed, and Tennessee came in our house and just punched us in the mouth because we had Lamar drop back and throw it 60 times when historically and statistically we were the best rushing team of all time in 2019. And we had Lamar throw the ball like 60 times. It makes no sense. 2019, they abandoned the identity. Last year, they abandoned the identity, got away from what we do best, and just had costly penalties and somehow coaching decisions which just don't make sense. So I think, like Sutton said, the Ravens have as good as a chance as anyone this year, and if not the best chance. But the only thing stopping them is themselves. They lose themselves games, they shoot themselves in the foot, and they are the only reason that their Ravens are the only thing standing between them and being in a Super Bowl this year. Let's put it at that.
I'm gonna exclude the 2018 playoff loss because Lamar was, I think, barely 22 years old. And it was just this whole situation with Marty Morningweg and all that. But you get into 2019, like you guys mentioned, and there's 2 failed QB sneaks on 4th and 1, which the Ravens had not ran a QB sneak all year, attempted it twice in a playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
You have an interception. Was there 1 or 2 interceptions? I don't even know.
I think one.
There was the one that went off Mark Andrews' hands.
Yeah. And it was just like giving up 1-play touchdowns after a turnover and, all that type of stuff. And then you have the 2020 loss to the Bills, which we can all admit was not a great Ravens team. But even then, you're down 10-3 at, the 8-yard line. And this is what people forget about. Right before the pick six, Hollywood's wide open in the end zone. And pressure gets to Lamar half a second too fast. And he gets hit or sort of like tugged on his jersey as he's releasing the ball. And incomplete, can't get it there. Pick six on the next play, 17-3. 1 play later, Lamar gets in concussion. Then you got 2 years in a row, which I'm not even going to mention 2022, even though there was the Huntley fumble. Lamar wasn't playing, it doesn't matter. And then last year you have a strip sack, which the Ravens did get a stop. Stopped Pacheco on 4th and 1 right after that. But then you have the Zay Flowers fumble at the 1, which is just terrible to think about. And then even at the time, it felt like the game was sort of out of reach or over, but it really wouldn't have been if they would have gotten in the end zone. The Lamar triple coverage throw to Likely in the end zone is just – it's terrible. Like there's 3 or 4 massive mistakes every playoff loss, when in a normal regular season game, it's like usually there's none. And it's just hard to understand. And in the Texans, I guess you could call like giving up a punt return, maybe that's a massive mistake.
Yeah.
But it's not. Last year they weren't a top tier team, and they're just easier to overcome. But
it's just like when the Ravens get to the playoffs, they try to play a game and a brand of football that they're not, and they know they're not, but they still try because I think it throws the opponent off guard. But it's a playoffs, dude. You're not going to catch anyone off guard. They're expecting everything and all of it. So as long as the Ravens if the Ravens play exactly how they've gone the last 5 weeks, man, you cannot tell me that they wouldn't win a Super Bowl right now with this team. If the Super Bowl was tomorrow and they're playing whoever it is, whoever, and literally name the team, you can't tell me they don't have a great chance at winning that game and winning the Super Bowl. Like, it's just the brand of football they're playing right now, other than, of course, the penalties and stuff. But like we said, if they clean that up, dude, there's nothing stopping this team. So,
yeah, couldn't put it any better.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any final thoughts? Sutton, do you have any mystery question for us at the end of this one?
Not this time. I didn't have one prepared this time. I think we covered a lot in this one, so
Yeah.
no, I think I'm good.
all I want to say real quick is I'm not predicting it. It's not going to happen. But if Jameis Winston throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on this defense this week, this fan base is going to be in flames. Everybody prepare yourself. If Jameis Winston throws for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on our defense this week, not even just if he just has a field day against our defense, man, good luck.
They're gonna be calling for War's head for sure.
It's gonna not gonna be pretty, but I think our offense gets it done. I think our offense puts up like 40 points.
Yeah, I saw on NFL Network. I actually have it pulled up on the TV right now. You know how they do the start 'em and sit 'em on fantasy.
Mhm.
Ravens. Well, I think it's Ravens defense is a start 'em against the Browns offense. So
Wow,
that is
Wow.
interesting. It's very
that's encouraging.
interesting.
That is
I know.
encouraging.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll just leave it at that.
We're also what, like 9.5 point favorites.
True.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we are. Yeah.
I
That's
think it's
wild.
9.
That's wild.
There we go. Everyone be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't. Sutton, thanks for joining us again. It's great having you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Everyone go subscribe to the Purple Rain podcast if you guys aren't already. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.